Hello, beautiful people. It's Rochelle Ray, your prosperous life coach, mental health counselor, and motivational speaker. Last time I came to you, we were still talking about grief and how to process grief and loss. And I shared with you a metaphor of grief about how if you have an open wound and when you cry out in pain, that starts your healing process. And also the types of grief styles that people often have, such as instrumental grief, when you are on automatic and then you're like, okay, step one, step two, step three, and planning the funeral arrangements and notifying the family that there has been a loss that has occurred. So instrumental grief is the thinking part of grief. It involves problem solving, making the funeral arrangements. Sometimes you have reoccurring thoughts about the surrounding of how the death took place, such as the how and why. When you're in instrumental grief, it's less emotionally expressive about the loss when it occurs. It's more, okay, what needs to be done? And then the other style of grief is intuitive grief. And this is when the focus is on feeling those emotions that are taking over you. It's a strong emotional response to the loss. You have more of a outward display of your grief versus being less expressive with the instrumental grief. And those people who have intuitive grief, they are more likely to seek out support to help them through this time. And just because you start off in either style does not mean that you will stay in that style of grief the whole time. It's just that that's how you responded to your loss at that time. So as time goes over, the person who starts out in instrumental can gradually move on the continuum toward intuitive, where now they're at a point where they're able to express their grief outwardly and emotionally. And now the person who started off intuitively, they're able to gradually go the opposite way and be instrumental in, okay, we've expressed our grief. We felt the pain and the shock and the loss. Now we're able to close up loose ends, like what are we going to do with the loved ones' belongings? Are we going to give them away? Are we going to sell them? Did they have a will where they wanted certain people to have certain possessions that they own? And so that's how they switch and move on as they go through the healing process. So neither responding in either way is not good or bad. It's just that for that particular person, that's their response at the time, and that's what may be needed at the time to help them start their healing process. So in today's video, we're going to talk about the 5 stages of grief. And these, sometimes people can experience them one behind the other. Sometimes you can go from one stage and jump over another stage. There's no wrong or right way, but these are the most common things that have been recorded when people grieve. And so in knowing the stages of grief, it will allow you to know where you are in your grieving process. And it'll also give you insight to the things that you are feeling. Because some people have the thoughts that I shouldn't be feeling this way, or, is this normal? Well, grieving is different for each person, but having these stages and what each stage looks like will help guide you and those who are supporting you as you grieve to know where you are and some things. And if it becomes complicated grief, then you need to seek out additional help. So 1 to 2 years, you may be going through this. Sometimes it may be stronger or more intense than other times, and that's perfectly normal for what you're going through at that time. But when it gets past that 3 years, okay, maybe it's still there, but the intensity is not as strong, and that's okay. However, when it goes to the 4th, 5th year, and you're constantly thinking about death, or you're constantly wanting to die, or you're constantly having feelings of guilt, and you can't get past that guilt, that's a trigger to let you know, and your loved ones who are supporting you know, that you need professional help, that you need help that's beyond what you're currently getting and the support that you're currently having, because you don't want it to turn into depression. And then that would be an even bigger uphill battle that you would have to face. In addition to the grief, now you're having to deal with depression on top of that. So the first stage that people encounter when they're grieving is called denial. During this stage, the reality of what has happened is questioned. Sometimes you're in such a shock or in such a state of denial, you believe that a mistake has been made, or maybe there's a mix-up, or the diagnosis that was given was incorrectly given, and then you may seek a second or third opinion, or you may be, in disbelief because you're like, no, this couldn't happen. I just spoke to them 10 minutes ago. I just saw them a week ago or a day ago. We had lunch together. And because you were just in their presence, you're in denial because of the news that you're receiving surrounding their death. So that's the first stage, is denial. The next stage is anger. Not everyone experiences anger. Not everyone experiences denial. Sometimes you can jump right into anger, and then you may go back to the denial stage. So it's going to be different for each one, but it's going to let you know and be able to effectively deal with the feelings and the emotions that you're having and the thoughts that are occurring. So in the anger stage, people who are grieving, sometimes they seek to cast blame. Either they're going to blame themselves or they're going to blame others. They may ask questions like, why me? Why is this happening to me? Or there are instances where those who are grieving, they become angry with the deceased. And they begin to say they were so selfish if in the event of suicide that they took their own life. Or sometimes they say, well, if they would have just held on a little longer, not knowing what their will was and what they were going through, the pain and the suffering and the anguish that they feeling. The grievers sometimes blame the person that has passed on. But as I stated in the other videos, there are things that are beyond our control. And so we don't have control over that. And so in starting your healing process, it's going to be important to come to acceptance of what has taken place. So when you're not in denial and you're in acceptance, then you're further along in that healing process and the death, the loss that you had experienced. So when you feel anger, it's normal. It's something that people experience, and it's a feeling that you have, that you're expressing because of the loss that you feel, and that you can't get them back. You can't bring them back. So acknowledging your anger and, getting help and talking about and sharing that you're angry and getting to the bottom of that anger would allow you to heal even more. Okay, so you don't have to hide that you're angry. That's a normal part of life. There are some things that we get angry about, but it's how we take that energy from the anger and use it to where it becomes productive and not destructive because of the loss that's being experienced. So the next part of the grief stage is bargaining. When you know that a loved one has passed away or they're on their sick bed, and you're hoping maybe that's something that can be done in the last minute to prolong their life, some people will go into bargaining. And this is used as a way to avoid the cause of grief. So it's an avoidance that is taking place. So let's say, you found out that a loved one received a terminal diagnosis. And as the person that's there offering support and, taking care of them, their caregiver, you may begin to bargain saying that I will eat healthier. I'll stop lying. I'll quit smoking. I'll start going to church more. I'll do everything right if they could just get better. So that's you bargaining and trying to have a trade-off for one thing for another to extend their life. And you don't have the power to do that. So no matter what type of bargain you make, it's not going to change the fact that they have that diagnosis, that they're on their deathbed. So bargaining is a way of you avoiding the possible outcome of death, and that a cure may not be found, or maybe their will is just not there to go on and fight through the pain and the struggle that they have been encountering due to their illness, or even if it's acute and the death happened suddenly and you didn't have this time, to process that, yeah, they are ill and they may die. It just happens. So you may not even experience the bargaining stage. You may go right into denial or anger. So that's why I was stating at the beginning, you may go through all of these stages sequentially, or you may not, depending on the circumstances surrounding your loved one's death. So after bargaining, which is the third stage, the fourth stage is depression. Okay, this depression is different from the depression I mentioned earlier that may occur third, fourth, fifth year after the loved one has passed away. Okay, so there will be, during your mourning, your grieving period, the fourth stage, you're going to enter some depression. And this depression may be a loss of motivation for living, and that's temporary. You may find that you're isolating yourself. You don't want to be around others. And you're entering into the mourning phase where you're crying, and you feel that void and that loss, and you just want to be kept to yourself. You just want to be still. That's a depression that is normal with grieving, but it's not going to be long term. It's going to be temporary. It could be 6 months to a year, maybe 2 years. Maybe you're beginning to gradually come out of isolating, but you're able to be around with each other's, but your motivation may not be back where it was before the person passed away. And then as time goes on, then you gradually see that your motivation is beginning to come back. This type of depression is to be expected when you have a loved one that has passed away. Okay? That part of depression is normal. It will ease, it will lift, but also some of the symptoms that I mentioned in the other videos was a lack of eating, or maybe you're overeating. Those are part of the depression symptoms that you can look out for. Okay, you want to have a healthy balance. You want to get out and walk, while you're going through this depression stage, 5-10 minutes, just casually walking. And then as time goes on, increase it, because you want to take care of your physical body. You want to make sure that you are exercising and keeping your health up. This is, you don't want to begin to pine away, is what they call it, when you just begin to shut down, and that leads to the clinical depression that you're going to have to get help for. And the last stage of the grief process is acceptance. This is when you as an individual come to accept that you have a loss. Yes, there's pain, and the pain may linger. But you also begin to get a sense of calmness during the acceptance stage. And you're able to resume your life and your normal activities without the guilt. Okay? So in the acceptance stage, you accept that you have a loss or death, whether that's a loss of a job, loss of a relationship, loss of a loved one. You are accepting that, and you understand that there is some pain involved, and that the pain is maybe not as intense. If you remember the scenario from the metaphor from the last video with the wound that you cut, and it's a deep cut wound and you cry out in pain. Well, in the acceptance stage, the pain is not as severe. It's tender. So things that come up may trigger and you feel some hurt, some loss, but it's not that intense pain. This is where the pain is easing. So there's tenderness, some soreness. You see the healing, the scab, the wound is beginning to close. So in the acceptance stage, you'll experience that, and then you're more calm. You're not continually to have the anxious thoughts of, I wish I was dead. I wish I could be with them, or I wish they could come back, or you're constantly thinking on death. That happens in the depression stage. So at this stage, you're able to pick up and resume your normal activities. You're able to eat normally, not overeat or undereat, but you're following your normal eating patterns. You're following your daily routine of hygiene, washing your face, brushing your teeth, getting dressed, combing your hair, those type of things. Seeing, okay, do I need to go out and run errands? Is my bereavement time at work over, and is it time for me to call in and say, okay, I'm ready to report back to work? Those type of things. So those are some normal things that you were doing before. And in the acceptance stage, you'll be able to get back to that because you're in your healing process and you're not taking your anger out on others because you see that they're happy and that their loved ones are here and they're able to interact and you're without. So you're accepting that, okay, I can't bring them back. They have moved on. It was beyond my control, but I can live in such a way to bring purpose to their death, depending on the circumstances that were surrounding their death. So just know that these stages may not automatically happen 1, 2, 3. Starting with denial and anger and bargaining. One person may start out in denial, and then they may jump to depression, and then they may go back to bargaining. So it just depends on each individual. So I want you to keep that in mind. It's not going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You may jump or start out in a different stage, and it's okay. But it's for you to be aware of what the stage looks like so you can know what's going on with you. And so those who are offering you support will know what's going on and how to help you through those stages so that you can grieve properly. And so when it goes beyond that and depression begins to set in, that's when you're going to need professional help, and the negative emotions will be there constantly. It'll be constant sadness, constant feelings of loathing and poor self-esteem. You'll have constant thoughts of death, wanting to join your loved one. You're so focused, you may feel worthless, that you're the one that survived. And that pain of depression is just sitting on you like a heavy blanket. So those are some things to look out for when it goes beyond that and is leading to clinical depression. So I'm going to have a worksheet attached with this in the comment to help you get through that and to help you get through the grieving process. So just look for that in the comment. I'll have that posted. So I hope that this helps you and your loved one as you go through your grieving process. A lot of people are passing away due to the pandemic that's taking place. And then some people are just, maybe they were already ill when this came on, and this probably compounded that. So this is a way that you can be aware of your loved ones grieving, if you're there supporting them, or if you're the person that's grieving, and to know that it's okay for you to grieve and also to get help and support. And another way that you can get help is to look for support groups in your area. There are different organizations that hold support groups for grieving and death and loss and those type of things. And you can have like some ongoing support if you need it. So there are some things that you can do as you grieve and go through your process. And I hope that these videos have helped you deal with that. And remember, if it's not you, you may know someone who is experiencing this. So please share the video so they can get help. And there's also attachments to help work through that. So remember, may you prosper and be in good health even as your mind prospers. Bye-bye.